Parenting in After Effects. So we have this basic Greek character, and you have seen that all the parts are separated here. And so let's connect all these different body parts. So there is two ways to connect layers in After Effects. One of which is this whip, and let's say this is the hand, which is going to be parented to the lower arm, and which is going to be parented to the upper arm, which is going to be parented to the body. So one way to do it is select this whip and leave on the particular layer you want to parent with. So in this case it's this one, so I'm going to leave it here, and you can see what happens in this parent column is by default it was none. Control Z, if it was none, and now it has become this particular layer. So that is actually the another way to parent a layer to another layer, which is go to this menu, and from here also you can choose the layer you want to parent with. Hopefully, I mean, this is the one I want to parent with. So now if I select this layer and if I move it, you can see all the child layers are moving accordingly, and obviously I have done the centering of the anchor point before parenting. So let's hit the W key, which is the rotation key, and now I can rotate it like this. So very basic thing. And then once you do the entire parenting, you can create null layers. Let's say I need to move the entire character, then I can parent it with a null layer, and this is a null layer. Let's delete this one and create a new null layer, and null object. This is how you can create a null object. And another thing is, if you need to parent multiple thing with a single layer, then you can select multiple layers, and you can parent them like this. Then all of the things are going to be parented, and also you can do it like this, same thing. Okay, another thing is, why does it call whip? If you do this thing, leave here, you can see it's acts like a whip. And rubber band jaisa. Okay, after that you not only you can parent any specific layer to another layer, you can parent different values also to other layers different values. Let's say I don't want to parent these layers together, I want them to independent like this, but I want to parent their rotation values only. Okay, so what I can do, I will select three of the layer and hit R to get the rotation, and now I can only rotate only parent the rotation value, and you can do it with any keyable keyable thing in After Effects, whether it is an effect or transformation properties like this. You can parent any value with another value. So let's do that. So see, to parent a particular transformation value, what we have to do is we have to press Alt and then click here in the stopwatch icon, which is the key icon, and if I do that, you can see the values become red, and then we get this window. This is basically where you do your scripting in After Effects. We are not going to cover that, but there is some another thing which is, and here you will get some scripting basic thing, like if you want to add light scripting with some effect, then you can choose those things from here. So we are not going to cover that. What we are going to cover is this whip option. So that means actually we can select this value, and if I leave on the rotation value of this layer, I'm not leaving it here. You can see it's gonna do something else which I don't want. So if I leave on the rotation value of this layer, then what is going to happen is it's going to create the scripting automatically. That means if I hit the small enter on your numpad, or click somewhere which is not something empty area, then what is going to happen is it's going to rotate parent only the rotation value. So now if I move this layer, you can see it's not parented with this layer, both of them are independent. But if I, let's say, rotate this, actually I have done the opposite thing maybe. So yes, I have done the opposite thing. So if I so let's do the opposite thing. Actually in these cases we parent position values, right? So let's do the opposite thing and go to the rotate tool, and you can see, yes, I've done the opposite thing here. So basically what we need to do is, let's say I'm parenting these values again, and now if I just look at the values, if I change this value, the other value is automatically getting changed, which is not useful in this case, but that can happen. Okay, so we can parent particular values to any other layers particular value. So not only transformation values, we can also change parent you know effect values or things like that. So let's try something like that. Let's say go to the I'm going to go to the position value for both of these two layers, and I'm going to hit alt on this layer. If I parent with the null layers position, then what is going to happen? First of all, it jumps to that position, and secondly, if I change the position, it follows the position, but if I rotate it, it's not going to rotate with it. So in many cases we are going to need this when we are going to do rigging for our character animation or motion graphic stuff. And let's do another thing. Let's apply some effect on the hand. Let's say I'm going to add a glow. And make it 0, and I'm going to, when I add some effect, we get this option for effects, and if I expand that, we get the glow. And I'm going to, then we have this intensity, and we can actually key from here also intensity, or we can actually, let's collapse the entire thing. We want to parent the glow effect with the position of the null layer. So let's go to this layer and select alt and click here, and the entire thing get expanded. And then again I'm going to select the whip for the glow intensity, and going to leave it to the position layer, position value. And then what is going to happen is the depending on the position value, actually we cannot change it anymore because it's parented to the null. Now depending on the position value, this glow is going to be higher or lower. Sorry, not this one. You can see if I make it 0, then it's like this, then 1. So obviously the value is quite high, because only if I add 1 intensity, then it's quite hard. So let's try with another effect maybe, but you got the idea hopefully. So let's use HLS, and let's go to the rotation and press alt and parent with the rotation value of this thing. And now if we are going to rotate this with the rotation tool, if I am going to rotate this null layer, it's going to change the color of the hand. So I know this is not anything useful, but this is how it works. You can parent with different values with different values of another layer. So let's go back, and this is basically parenting. There is not a lot of thing to say. You can parent to pre-comp to any other layer. You can do that. You can parent actually any keyable thing, parameter. So after that, let's go to 3D layers and let's create a new composition, a new project. We're going to save it, and I'm going to create a new composition, and then I'm going to create a new solid layer. Maybe I'm going to make it black as of now, and then I'm going to create a text called SRFTI. So this one, and now these layers are obviously 2D layers. So if I select both of the layer and hit P, you can see we have only two values, which is X and Y, but we can get the third dimension, which is the Z dimension. And to turn on 3D in a composition, what you have to do, we have to toggle to the swatches from the mode, and from there we have this 3D swatch. For each and every layer, you can, let's say I want this layer to be 3D, I can only make this layer 3D and another layer is not going to be 3D. Let's make both of the layers 3D, and now we have values for position, rotation. You can see all of the values have the Z value here. So now not only I can change X and Y, now I can actually let's turn this thing off. We can go to the Z direction, and for the rotation also, not only for X and Y, we have the Z direction. Okay, but the thing is, we are not going to be able to use all the 3D layer properly until we have a 3D camera. Okay, so because I mean right now we have 3D layers, but we cannot we can change, we can orient or rotate those layers, but we cannot orient our views, okay, around the object. So for that we need to have a 3D camera, because we are now currently working in a two-dimensional space and we need a three-dimensional space for to do that. So I'm going to create a new camera. Obviously you can create it from the layer menu. You're going to get the same thing from here. Layer menu, go to new, and then you can create a 3D camera. And if you do that, then it's going to ask very few basic questions, whether it's gonna be a one node camera or a two node camera. I'm going to show you the difference between them, but as of now let's create a two node camera. Then you can create a name of the camera, then you can select different focal lengths. So I'm going to choose 24 millimeter, and all the other options you can check, but these are the option mostly you're gonna choose. And so hit OK. Then it might seems like nothing have happened, but if you select the camera tool, the shortcut is C, and under the camera tool we have all the option for we have orbit, we have track, and Z which is basically track through this space. But if I select the camera tool, it can do all of those things. So if I now select the left mouse button and click and drag, it will basically rotate the view. So let's hide the black solid right now. So if I left click and drag, it will rotate the view. If I press the middle mouse button and drag, it will pan the view. If I right click and drag, then it will track in and track out. Okay, so this is how actually you navigate the camera tool. And now what we can do is select this black solid layer, and we can rotate it like this, maybe 90 degree in Y or minus 90 degree. And then I can also use these gizmos to move the layer. You can use also the rotate tool. You can go to each and every individual handles, or from the bottom you can change all of them together. So let's go to the selection tool and bring it down, and I don't want any, I want minus 90. Okay, and let's scale up the layer, and of course we have now 3 values for scaling. And go to the position. So I'm going to move it like this. Now we have this, so let's in the scale value I'm going to just uncheck uniform scaling and expand the ground. Now let's say I'm going to add some effect on it, which is going to be turbulence fractal noise. Next day we are going to cover the effects in After Effects. So this is something like this, and now let's explore the light. And another thing we can do is let's duplicate this ground layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the scale, I'm going to 190, then rotation, I'm going to rotate, I'm going to make it 0, so it's going to be flat. And now with the selection tool I'm going to move it back and move upward. And one more thing that you need to see is now we are going to utilize these different view options that we haven't explored before. Now we can make it 2 views. One of them is going to be active camera view, another one is going to be top view. So if you go to the top view and select the camera tool, you can zoom out and you can see this is where our camera is. You can move, you can manipulate all the different layers from here also. You can even move the camera like this, just like a 3D software. You can go to 4 views and you can try all the different views, and share viewing option, I don't know what it is. So okay, anyway, so let's now explore the light options. So let's create another solid actually. So let's duplicate this one, and from the rotation I'm going to do it again minus 90 degree, and I'm going to move it somewhere here. Now let's create a light in After Effects. Okay, I don't need to save it. So another thing is, once you create a 3D layer, you get some options which is called the material option. So let's collapse everything, and if I expand it, then we have two things. Oh, this is a text layer, so let's not gonna collapse this thing and expand again. So one thing is effect that we have used, fractal noise. Another is transformation, which is the basic transformation values, and then we have material option. So in the material option, we have this option, the cast shadow and other things like diffuse, specularity, and all this thing that we get in 3D objects. But to actually properly use them, we need 3D light. And also, if you expand the camera options, then we get, apart from the transformation, we get in camera option, we get depth of field, camera blur, and iris rotation, and all these things, highlight threshold, and all, to get realistic you know camera rendering from a 3D camera. So let's explore a little bit of them. So what I'm going to do is right click and create a new light, and another light section. We have in this dialog box, we have few options. You can rename the light, and we can use a parallel light, which is like a sunlight. We can use a spotlight, which is going to be focused on a particular thing. We can use point light, which is going to be like a omnidirectional, like bulb type of light source. And then we have ambient light, which is basically a globally illuminated light. So I'm going to use I'm going to show you all the three things. So if you select the spotlight, and you can select the light color, we can do all these changes later on also. It is going to cast shadow, the cone angle, and the feathering, that we are going to decide after the after we get the light. So let's create a light, and once we create the light, you can see. So let's actually change the background color to black. So now we can see everything in our screen is getting darker, because now we are seeing through only the light source. So let's move the color light, and actually let's move this thing. And you can rotate it from here. I'm not going to do that because it's a little bit tricky. Or you can do all the rotation and all these things from the transformation menu. And one thing you can see, so let's increase the intensity of the light. So in the light option, then we have this intensity option, sorry, here. So let's increase it quite a little bit. We are getting some nice hot spot. And now you can see we are not getting any shadow, though the cast shadow is turned on for the light. Now the thing is, the cast shadow attribute is turned on in the light, but in the the layers we are working with, they also have their own layer properties, but there this option is not turned on by default, so we have to do that. And so go to the light, this 3D layer, which is the text layer, and go to the material option, and from there we are going to turn on cast shadow. So if we do that, then we will get to see the shadows. And then accept shadow means basically whether to accept shadow from another object. and limit transmission is basically blending with the color of the particular layer. And accept lights, whether to accept light from any light source. If I don't do that, if I turn it off, you can see there is no hotspot, but there is the shadow because I have turned on the shadow. Now actually no light is affecting this particular layer. It's actually getting the flat basic light which this layer already had. So turn on the accept light. Then we have this option. We are exploring the option for the text layer, but these options are basically same for all solid or the normal layers. So we can turn change the ambience. Right now it's not making any a lot of change. We can change the diffuse. It's going to be brighter or darker if we change the diffuse. Then we have specular intensity. That's basically going to create specular hotspot areas. And then specular shininess, then to get metallic kind of look. We are not using any complex 3D shape. We are using with a simply flat, so we are not seeing those difference. Then this metal option and all, I have never used that. Those are not that necessary because I'm not going to do extensive 3D work in After Effects. So let's go to again from this view. It's very hot. So let's go to the light intensity option and make it 100 again. Maybe a little bit higher than 100, and we can change the color to any color we want. And if I the preview option is not turned on, but if I hit OK, then we can see the changes happening. So I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to make it white as it was. Then we have cone angle, and in the cone angle we can change the degree of the cone angle. We can make it like this, and the best thing is all these values are animatable. So yes, you can animate them. And then we have the feather value of the cone. So this basically soften or make it harder. So Deepak, if you are planning to use something in 3D space, so you can use this thing. So after that we have the fall off, whether to be smooth, which is basically the decay rate. To get the fall off value, hopefully I have to increase the light intensity, but it does not work properly. Yes, I have to increase the light value, and you can see what is happening. It's giving me a much more realistic result. That means the light is getting decayed as with the distance from the light source. You can see. So let's make it smoother. Maybe I have to increase it more. I know it's not working. So this is it. So I'm going to make it none, and then I'm going to make this value 120. And these are the values for basically shadow darkness percentage and all. You can change the intensity of the shadow darkness, and this is the shadow diffusion. So you can see in it's kind of giving a ray traced shadows. That means basically when it is going away from the light source, we are getting this kind of feathery blended kind of shadow, and when it's closer to the actual object, the shadow, and then it's crisp sharp. So we can manipulate that value from here. So these are all inside the light options. Ray traced, this is not perfect ray traced option. For ray traced, with ray trace you get global illumination, indirect illumination, all that kind of thing. This is basically, but without ray trace you are not going to get this kind of decayed, this kind of feathery shadow type of look. You normally get with what is called bitmap shadows. You get global feather type of thing you get with bitmap shadows. Anyway, So let's change the light light option. That we can do by double clicking from here, and also we can do the same thing. Okay, there is some option also for the shadow darkness and shadow diffusion. Oh, that we have covered already. Anyway, so the light option we can change from here also. So let's make it parallel light. Now you can see what happens is, with parallel light, it is basically like a sunlight. The light intensity is a little bit high, but the light is coming from a parallel direction. There is no particular light source. You need to just rotate the you know uh, either rotate the direction of the light, and there is no particular light. So as I've said, so it's going to change the it's going to be just a directional light. uh, so let's then change the to the point light, and point light is a omnidirectional light. Though you get a rotation value, the rotation value is actually useless, so we cannot. So let's move the light. As I have changed the rotation earlier, so that's why it's showing the gizmo like that, tilted on in one side. But this is basically like a bulb, or that kind of a light source. It can be a candle or that kind of thing. So we can change the intensity or down, and there all these basic options are there that we have already explored. And the radius we can change that, and the fall off value, again we get the fall off. And you can see that we get pretty realistic result. um, it's not updating. Okay, so turn this thing off, so it's making my computer very slow. Anyway, so this is very basics of light and camera and 3D layers in After Effects. So I can give you a very basic demonstration with this thing. I mean, with I can make a 3D text layer animation type of thing, reveal type of thing, to basically show you the what you can explore with this thing with 3D layer. What are the possibilities? So all these layers we have this option. In the fractal noise, in this fractal noise effect, we have, let's make it different type of fractals. Let's make it dynamic. Let's make all of them dynamic. I don't know, this one maybe like this one maybe something else. Okay, and I can actually animate all these values by changing the evolution. So let's make at least one evolution that will actually do something like this. So these values are changing basically. Again the same thing here, one entire evolution. So same thing here. I'm going to change, I'm going to save it. So there is some movement. After that, let's add some color in it. So I'm going to use the tint effect. So I'm going to apply a two-tonal color. So maybe the darks are going to be this is reddish something, so I'm going to make it something dark brown type of thing. And the light, I'm going to make it this kind of a lighter color. let's copy this and paste for both of the layers, so we are getting something warm. And let's create a new light. It's going to be a spotlight. Hit OK, and oh, so let's zoom in. And oh, another option that I haven't explored yet, which is the camera option for camera depth blurs, and so we're going to do that here. So let's move the light and go to the rotation. I'm going to rotate the camera angle like this, and for the camera options I'm going to change the cone angle. I'm going to key the cone angle, so very gradually it's going to reveal for us. So at the start it's going to be 0, and at the end it is going to be something like this. Now I'm going to increase the intensity. Okay, the fall off is good. I'm going to add some shadow diffusion, and now okay, let's save it. Three D layer I already have it, so 3D layer 02. Okay, now what I'm going to do is let's change the color to, let's see what we can use. After that, so now we need a camera movement. So let's say this is going to be the end position. Oh, there is a lot of thing to cover in the camera tool also. So in the camera tool, so let's explore that. Let's turn off the light, and if I go to this to horizontal view, and then if I select this layer, the light, then you can see that we have, if we expand the transformation properties of the light of the camera, then you can see we have these two things, which is the point of interest and the position, and which is basically, let's go to the side view, so left view, and which is basically the position is basically the position of the camera, but it's always facing something, so that is the point of interest. Okay, so that means if I go to the top view, and if I change the position, if I select the camera, and if I do like this, it's going to automatically rotate the entire thing. because I'm not changing the point of interest. Okay, and go to the left view, you can see also. Okay, and if I change the point of interest, then this is what happens. So, and then we have orientation and rotation. Rotation is basically the global value, you know, and orientation basically works to 160 degree. Sometimes you need to use the orientation, sometimes the rotation. Right now we are not, you know, the camera is not tilted that much, so you are not seeing that much of a change, that much of a difference. Anyway, so this is the camera parameter, and if you select, if you double click on it, then we go back to the camera settings dialog box, and from there if you select one node camera, then what happens, we only have position and rotation, then we don't have any point of interest. So sometimes using one node camera is also very useful. And from if here how we do the, you know, rotation point of interest thing, we do it with the orientation of the camera. So let's go to the top view. We can do it by orienting the camera. So that's actually sometimes easy, because you don't, let's say you don't have to focus on a particular thing and you want this kind of a free form camera head movement, then one node camera is the right option for you. But in this case I'm going to use the two node camera. And so let's turn off the light again, and let's go to the one view, and let's find the end camera angle, and that might be something like this or something like this. No, let's say this is the last, this is the end view. And actually let's just scale up these two layers. So now I need to lock this position, and to do that you can see I haven't changed any rotation value right now, so I'm just going to key on both of these position and point of interest, and I'm going to also key on the orientation. And at first it should be somewhere here, so actually the first value I want to be somewhere here. So this should be the first position. Now I can actually change the keyframe to the start position, and let's see. So it's going to look like this. And I'm going to add some F9. So now it's looking like this. सब देख रहा है सोचिए तो नहीं डार्कनेस से रिवील हो रहा है ना अंदर डार्क एंड शैडोज something in the light, but there is a lot of shadowy areas. But it's not finished yet. I'm going to add depth of field. It's not finished yet. So um, now I'm going to use the camera depth of field, and how we do that is so let's expand the camera options, and from there we have this option called depth of field, and if I turn it on, then boom, and nothing happened actually because the aperture value is too low. So if I do this, so if I crank up the aperture something like 100, because हुआ कुछ नहीं हुआ. So by default it's on the focus actually, huh? So now the big question is, how can we control the focal length, right? you know this is the one thing is this focus option, focus distance, we need to change it. Now one way to do it, just guessing like that, and which is going to be really slow process if you do that, like guess where the position should be, and right now it's somewhere in the middle. And another, the very efficient way to do it is, go to the first position. You can, and the thing is, with the camera movement you always going to be need to change the focal distance, because otherwise everything is going to be blurry. So and with the light turned on we are not going to see anything, so let's turn off the light, and now go to these two views, and here if you can see, then one extra rectangular window have popped up here. So if I turn it off, this thing is not there. If I turn it on, then that's there. And another thing, let's just go to the SFTR this layer and make it yellow. And so this is the layer. Now what we can do is, this depth of field plane we can move it to where we want it to be. So let's change the focal distance to, maybe it's going to be somewhere here in this area. So let's change. Actually, now I can turn the light on. No, I cannot. Okay, because at the start it's going to be all dark. So maybe the focus should be, let's turn it on. Let's see where the light is. Maybe I'm not going to make it all the way 0. So let's select this layer, hit U, and make it a little bit light. So here I want the focus to be on this F. So let's change the focal distance. It's becoming sharper. So two values that are need to be keyed, one is the focus distance, and another thing is the aperture amount. Now when you are focusing something to very close up to the object, then you get shallow depth of field, and and when you are using a wide camera lens, you get lesser amount of depth of field, f-stop actually. Aperture, that f-stop value is here the aperture, and you don't get the f-stop value like you have in cameras. You get just numeric value. So at the end, let's see at the end, and you can see all the things is out of focused because the focal length is here. So we need to change it again. I'm going to shift it to this area, this yellow line. So now this is almost in focus, and the actually aperture, I think the focus, the out of focus, and this is quite okay. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text color maybe. So let's double click and change the color to something else to distinguish with the background. Now I can add a little bit more aperture, so let's make it 500. this is okay. So I'm going to key here and get fast. It's also good. And at the middle we need to again uh, actually the camera stops here, so I'm going to move these keyframes here. And this is actually fairly okay. I mean, we don't need to make a lot of change. One thing we can do is we can change the aperture value or the blur level. Blur level is just basically increases the amount of blur, and aperture is actually different. You can see there's a difference between that. Aperture creates realistic out of focus type of thing, and we don't need to in this case particularly we don't need to change the aperture. I'm just going to uh, key on the blur level. So here something like this, here it might be 300%, maybe 240. It's just a little bit drastic change, 200. And so anything else that we need to add? फायदा क्या, चलो. And maybe a little bit of color correction. And when you are going I'm going to add an adjustment layer, that is basically an empty layer where you can apply some effects. And maybe I'm going to add a level. So the level, maybe the darks, I'm going to make it a little bit blue. Why is it not happening? Oh. So it's not updating for some reason. Okay. हो जा. The red, maybe a little bit red. And if you want to add glow, you can do that, but it's gonna make the system very slow, so I'm not gonna do it. Oh, ज़्यादा ही हो गया. बट अच्छा वो थिंग भी कर सकते हैं, वो जो साइड में जो बल्ब्स, लाइट बल्ब्स ज़्यादा हो जाएगा नहीं. हाँ, ये तो ये तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा है शुरू में. बट फिर भी देखो ना, विद दिस डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड, हाँ कितना लुक चेंज हो गया. पहले तो फ्लैट फ्लैट प्लास्टिक चीज़ ऐसा लग रहा था. हाँ यहाँ पे घटाना चाहिए, बट रहने दो, ये होने दो. हाँ. So I know there is a lot of thing to practice, otherwise कोई फायदा नहीं. So next, हाँ हाँ हाँ, तो नेक्स्ट डे इसका प्रैक्टिस रहेगा, एंड देन उसके बाद इफेक्ट्स एंड मैट लेयर्स. हाँ अभी से शुरू होगा. हाँ मैं तो करते करते सीख गया यूट्यूब. और मैं ऑफ करता हूँ पहले. अगर रेंडर होने दो, बाद में बताऊंगा. डेप्थ एक्सट्रूड. हाँ उसके लिए एक ऑप्शन है यहाँ पे, एक प्लगइन है एलिमेंट 3D, वो यूज़ करके हम कर सकते हैं. वेवलिंग बेस FTI वो ज़्यादा ही मूव कर रहा है. बर्निंग अप. ठीक है। हाँ, बाकी सब में होता है, सब में होता है, सब में होता है। हम्म।